They threatened us with pistols and swords. Some guys tried to run off, but they captured them, brought them back, and beat them. I put an asparagus which was too short into the box. When they checked it, they asked, "Why have you put that one in?" And they kicked and beat me right away.
Ați fost plătit pentru munca pe care ați făcut-o acolo?
Considering the scope of the case and also the working conditions, especially in this case, and everything that has happened, this was a clear case of human trafficking. Do you want me to call the police right now or later on? This is the land of white gold, or asparagus. In Western Europe, asparagus doesn't come cheap, but many Eastern Europeans are paying a much higher price for it. Enticed by offers of reasonable living, upon arrival in the Czech Republic, they receive only threats and violence and get no payment for their work. The company ultimately managing the farms they work on is based in the Netherlands. So how is it possible for a Dutch company to profit from slavery inside the EU? The answers lie in Romania. We speak with the offenders. And we try to make inquiries on the holdings concerned.
Deci aici este unde gătim.
This is the kitchen.
Soba care fac la lemne.
The stove uses firewood.
Aici este dormitorul. Acolo dorm
This is the bedroom.
patul acela.
My children sleep here. My husband and I sleep here.
Și asta este.
Everything you see is made by
Asta e
us.
făcută de noi. Camera asta și
That's it.
aici tot de noi este făcut. Și cam asta este.
I thought we were going to the Czech Republic to earn real money. I imagined a house with separate rooms, but it wasn't possible.
Dar nu am avut posibilitate. Ce vrei, mă?
What do you want?
Du-te în casă.
We are in a village only 5 minutes drive from the Romanian capital of Bucharest. This is the home of Karina Rahovina. In the spring of 2008, she, her husband, and her husband's family were persuaded to leave their homes and move to the Czech Republic in search of work. But they were disappointed with the conditions in which they were forced to live. As soon as we arrived, our IDs were taken away from us. We then realized, I thought to myself, we have nowhere to go, no chance of escape, because they've taken our IDs. We asked for them back, but they were never returned.
Prima zi de muncă, cum a fost? Vi s-a părut ciudat și felul în care se comportau din prima zi sau doar ați mers și ați muncit și totul era în regulă?
Yes, they forced us to work and no rest. The first day we were at work, the Romanians were with us, Gabriel and Bujor, who were with us the whole day in the field. And they shouted at us, they were forcing us to work. We couldn't as much stop for a cigarette and smoke. Karina and her family had fallen into the hands of a group of people traffickers. They put labourers at work in the field of the company BSK, not far from Prague in the Czech Republic. The traffickers used a heavy hand to encourage workers to stay on the field late into the night, explains Karina's brother, Lonut. We were beaten with fists and feet if we didn't do as we were told. Some tried to run away, but they were caught, cut and beaten. George Titu lives a few houses down. He's experienced the violence of the traffickers to his cost.
Dar când ați fost bătut prima oară, ce s-a întâmplat? Cum ați ajuns să vă bată? Ce s-a întâmplat?
As I said, I made a mistake with the asparagus shoots. I had them in a box that was too small. When they arrived, they asked, "Why have you done this?" And then I was beaten and kicked afterwards. They cursed our family. We could only work, cry and work. When we said we wanted to leave, we were beaten again. None of the working men dared to intervene. If something happened, no one came to help, as then there is only more to help. And they threatened us with guns, knives and swords.
Ați spus săbii, cuțite și pistoale?
Da.
Yes.
Și puteți să ne ziceți mai mult de chestia asta? Cine le avea? Cine umbla cu ele?
Misha, Vladimir, the Czechs. I know I saw Misha with a gun. He had one in the car.
You know him?
Misha.
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 So that's Misha.
Ăla e Misha, ăla brunet.
Vladimir și Misha.
Vladimir e Misha.
So
Deci
what?
mai mult...
Misha was the one who used to threaten people.
Și Vladimir la ce făcea? Vladimir la...
Deci Vladimir îl comanda și pe Misha și... Deci mai venea și el din când în când.
Vladimir was in command. He was giving orders to Misha.
We are in the Czech Republic on the way to the courthouse, where the accused traffickers again appear before a judge as part of a protracted trial process. These are the Vladimir and Misha that Karina has been describing. And this is Vasil Bencer, the boss of the company that exploited the Romanians on the asparagus field. They stand accused of human trafficking and exploitation. This meeting is an opportunity for the introduction of additional evidence. This hearing is concluded on the 2nd of May at 1300 hours in this courtroom. The three defendants are imprisoned for 5 years. During the sentencing, the court states that they are convicted for the instilling of fear through threat of physical violence and death, the theft of identity papers, the use of physical violence, which logically resulted in an atmosphere of fear for the victims. But what of the role of the companies the human traffickers were working with? The asparagus company itself remains just outside the remit of the lawsuit. But what about the Dutch director with whom it did business? After the session, we can ask the main culprits a few questions directly.
With the director, with the boss of BSK?
With who? Yes. Bohemia Spargel culture? The director, the agriculturalist there is. I don't actually know. It was someone with authority, as they are a registered Dutch firm, a national company operating under an authorized person.
Okay. So who was your contact in BSK?
Coordinating between the Dutch director and traffickers was the manager of BSK, Michael Savenka. From court documents, it's apparent that this manager and several other employees of the asparagus company were heard as witnesses. None of them admit to any knowledge of the activities of the people traffickers. This is the home shared by Karina, her husband, her in-laws and their families. All were the victims of the traffickers. Her brother Lonert believes that the staff of the asparagus company were well aware of the crimes taking place in their own fields. There were definitely some who spoke in their language, who knew what was going on. We couldn't understand what was being said, but some of them knew. They knew it, they understood, but they sided with the others.
Dar cum aflau sau cum își dau seama cum erați tratați acolo?
Who? Us or them?
Nu, ăia care știau, cehii, de exemplu, care știau cum erați tratați, cum vedeau bătăi sau vedeau...
Yes, because the tractor drivers worked where they could see that we were hunted down. They would say, "Come on quickly, otherwise you'll sleep outside." That sort of thing. A Romanian detective has worked with the investigation. Because of his position, he wants to remain anonymous and not appear on screen. He argues that the companies doing business with Bencer knew very well that the workers wouldn't be paid. I cannot say whether they knew they were dealing with human traffickers, but they certainly knew that these people would perform work for which they would not be paid. They knew that the contractual conditions of the Romanian workers would not be complied with. According to the detective, the clients would have been well aware that the workers would not receive their wages, as stories of displaced Romanian workers were already well known at the time.
Can they say, we didn't know?
Acum, ei pot să spună orice, vă dați seama.
They can say whatever they want.
We go in search of Michael Savenka, the manager at BSK, and, according to the traffickers, the person who made business arrangements with them. If anyone at the asparagus company should know the details of what happened on the fields, it's him. We track him down to a shed in one of the farms of BSK. He refuses an interview, but we were able to have a short conversation with him.
By zajímalo, jakým způsobem vznikl ten kontakt mezi Bencou a BSK.
This is a question for the former management of this company, and you should turn to them.
Dat is een kwestie van het voormalige management van deze firma. En dan moet u zich tot hen wenden.
Wie zijn dat dan?
Heb ik dat toch zo?
The Teboza company.
Teboza.
Michael Savenka is referring to the former managers of the farm, the company Teboza. Teboza is one of the largest asparagus growers in the Netherlands and also owns half of BSK. And the Dutch director of Teboza was for a long time also the director of BSK, until a month before our visit to the company.
Ja, waar we ook niet heel nieuwsgierig naar zijn, hebben de mensen die hier van BSK gewerkt hebben in de tijd nooit iets gemerkt van hoe het met de Roemenen ging?
I can't answer you. You should ask the people who were here at the time.
Dat moet u vragen aan de mensen die hier destijds geweest zijn. Hij was er ook bij natuurlijk.
Ja, u was daarbij toch?
Ale vy jste tam taky byl, ne?
Yes, I was here then too, but I repeat, I am busy and have no need to tell you. The next day, we filmed the workers out in the asparagus fields. In 2009, the Czech police rounded up the gang of traffickers, following stories of displaced workers emerging since 2007. These days, the atmosphere seems more peaceful. There is no exploitation to be seen. We would like to ask these people about their working conditions, but this woman will not tell us anything. I will call Savenka. She calls Savenka, and he's on his way, but not to speak to us.
Mám zavolat policii hned nebo za chvilku. Včera jsem vás z areálu vyhodil, tady stojíte na soukromém pozemku. Takže si tu kameru
Gentlemen, do I need to call the police or something? I had you thrown out yesterday. You are standing on private property, so take that camera and get out of here. As Savenka starts to threaten us, we decide it's time to leave. And if I see you here again on one of our sites, I'll call the police immediately, and they'll be here in 5 minutes. And I'll smash that camera. Back in Romania, George Titu is describing to us his attempts to leave.
Păi și nu puteați lua legătura cu familia sau cum?
It was only after 2.5 months of asking that I was allowed to call. Afterwards, I still wasn't allowed to go home. I called my cousin and said I wanted to come home. I'm not enjoying myself. I really want to come. He wanted the same. But George couldn't escape. We show him the pictures of the traffickers themselves and Michael Savenka, the manager of BSK. George immediately recognizes him.
Have you ever seen this man?
L-ați văzut pe ăsta? He said yes, definitely. He was one of the person who slapped him, but he can't remember the name.
He hit him?
Yeah, he slapped him.
He hit you?
Dacă ăsta v-a tras o palmă, ăsta... He said yes.
Occasionally he protected us, but other times he hit us. If what George Titu says is true, This means that Michael Cervenka was well aware of how the workers were treated, sometimes even going as far as beating them himself.
Twice or 3 times per week.
Cervenka has explicitly stated to the court he had no idea of the poor treatment of the workers. Lonert says that the employees of BSK must have known about the situation. Cervenka refuses to respond to our questions over the issue. So instead, we submit our questions to the director of BSK at that time, Will Theeuwen. Theeuwen will not appear on camera, but his lawyer speaks on his behalf.
Wat u in de reportage laat zien,
what you see in the report is truly shocking. It is inconceivable that such things happen in this age. I would like to stress that my client is in all respects unconnected with these practices. According to the lawyer, the Dutch director became aware of the abuses after the Czech prosecutor had investigated. The moment my client learned of this, the first signs of an issue, he immediately broke off all contact with the Bear Logan company. Precisely. At this point, my client also announced to the prosecution that they would give their full cooperation to the investigation. I find it very distressing that liability is avoided when a business should have been aware that such practices are occurring, whether or not they are operating through a subcontractor.
Binnen jouw bedrijf, of dat nou via een uitzendbureau of een andere constructie is, dat je daarmee wegkomt.
According to MEP Amina Bozkurt, clients should be liable for abuses in their workplace, even if those actually guilty are intermediaries. Within Czech legislation, just about any company can tender for your business and then be left to its own devices in its operations. There is no formal employment relationship. And this is what has enabled the malpractice, this exploitation, to take place. And then the client can say, well, I knew nothing. I hired someone and this happened. What a nuisance. If the position of Ms. Bozkurt, as I understand it, is to consider the business liable by the mere fact of a business relationship for something happening which they cannot possibly know about, then she goes too far. According to the lawyer, the asparagus company received no indication of the abuses, even though more people worked in the fields beside the trafficked workers, as well as staff from BSK itself. If you consider that the other Czechs, after we offered names, but also in advance, never signalled any knowledge of the trafficking, then yes, there's only one thing I can conclude, that if these things occurred, it was certainly not visible, and my client has not been made aware of them. In April 2013, a new EU directive against human trafficking comes into force. Bozkurt wants the Netherlands to commit in writing to the prosecution of the liabilities of clients from Western nations. They must ensure that corporate responsibility is assured. So if a company could have known that trafficking was being committed by a subcontractor, or that due to poor control or supervision they have otherwise failed, then they are indeed liable. Because if it is not enshrined in legislation, nothing will change.
Dat ze wel degelijk aansprakelijk zijn. Want dat staat wel in de artikelen, maar ja, als het niet omgezet wordt in nationale wetgeving, dan gebeurt er nog niets.
When Karina realized that she was never going to receive payment for her work, she fled. One night I ran. I was very afraid. I escaped at about 2:30 and spent the whole day and night walking. When George Titu complained he had no money to return home or even buy food, he says he was threatened by one of the traffickers. When he warned me, I was threatened with rape. I fled and slept on the road. I was then arrested and my work permits had been taken from me. I tried to explain the situation, but we couldn't understand one another. They then sought an interpreter for me. One came from Prague, and they finally learned what had happened to me. I travelled by train. I told someone I had no money and that I wanted to go home. He gave me the fare to the Hungarian border, so I could surrender to the authorities and explain what had happened to me in the Czech Republic. And then it emerged that I wasn't the only case, but that there were several others who had been there as well. People with the same stories about Vladimir and the others.
Au fost și au povestit și ce s-a întâmplat tot cu persoanele Vladimir și cu...
The stories of Karina, George, and dozens of others eventually spurred the authorities into action. In 2009, the traffickers were arrested during a series of police raids. Last month, the 3 ringleaders were sentenced to 5 years in prison. The Romanian workers are still waiting for their wages.